Hello ladies and gents, this is the second of 6 interviews recorded for the Making of GoldenEye. I'll be uploading these in the order in which they were recorded. This time I'm talking to Graeme Norgate, who along with Grant Kirkhope composed the game's soundtrack. Graeme also did all the sound effects for GoldenEye. If you haven't watched the Making of GoldenEye, I'd recommend watching that first, as it's better hearing from all 6 developers together on the development of the game. I'm no professional interviewer, so again this is quite informal, but Graeme gave me some fascinating info on the music side of things. I've edited out some pleasantries at the start, so we'll dive right into the questions. Enjoy! Starting right at the start, if I could just get a bit of your background before working at Rare and how you actually came to work there.
Right, good question. So, going way back, I was like most of us growing up, completely obsessed with computer games. We're talking the 80s though, so we're sort of Spectrum and Commodore 64, moving on to the ST and Amiga stage, and then moving into consoles after that, which would have been the Super Nintendo for me. And from a very young age, I always wanted to do something with music, because that was my sort of main obsession, apart from when I wasn't playing computer games. So it was the dream was to try and mix the two together somehow, but I didn't really know how that was ever going to happen. So there was probably about five years of doing normal day-to-day jobs, whilst spending the evenings sort of teaching myself composition, that sort of thing. And then probably about a year before I started at Rare, I was seriously sending in show reels, or demo tapes as we called them back then, to anyone that would have them, with no success. But then there was a advert for a musician or musicians, can't remember if it was plural, in the Edge magazine fairly early on in their sort of run. I think it was like issue 4 or something, and I didn't at the time realize they were Ultimate Play the Game, which were they were the sort of poster boys of the 8-bit era with their games, because they were called Rare, and Rare were known for their NES titles, and were just about moving into the Super Nintendo. So that the NES passed me by. I think unless you were really into consoles or sort of Japanese gaming and stuff, that generation of consoles was not that big over here. I could be wrong, but so sent a tape in, and had an interview, and I think they told me they'd say, "Oh, well, we'll let you know in a week," or something like that. And it was like a month later, and I can remember thinking, "Yeah, I haven't got it, have I? It's not going to happen." But out of the blue, they took me on, and when I got there, I realised who they were, because everywhere, all over their buildings, they had framed pictures of all the games they worked on. So they had hundreds, well, I don't know, 10, I don't know how many games they did do for the NES, but it felt like hundreds of pictures everywhere. But obviously they had all the Jetpack and Saberman and Night Law and all that. It's like, oh my god, yeah, it's Ultimate. Jeez. So yeah, I was too much of a fanboy to ever speak to the Stampers about those days. I don't know if they would have liked to do that, but they were very firmly sort of facing the future. I think they weren't resting on their laurels. So maybe that was a wise thing not to do. But yeah, that was in a nutshell. Basically, saw a magazine advert, sent a tape in, got the job.
Wow, that's great.
That's it.
And
So
and you got your dream of combining the gaming with the
exactly
music.
yeah. I mean, I was never going to be a rock star as much as I would have liked to have been at the time. But yeah, that was just 5 or 6 short years of, of working every night to try and teach myself composition, and there you go, it all paid off.
Brilliant. So after arriving there, what was your first project?
So first thing I was on was the coin-op version of Killer Instinct. I mean, that was its first incarnation, and I worked on that with Robin Beanland. So we joined on the same day, start of April of '94, and that game came out. I think it came out Christmas that year. So it was a very quick turnaround. But it was a great starting point because I mean, the alternative was Super Nintendo, or they did the odd Mega Drive game, but that was kind of being phased out because they were more and more getting into sort of Nintendo's sort of side of things. So having come from a background of just writing music on keyboards and everything, and that being it, there was none of the, well, you write a piece on a keyboard and then you have to squeeze it into the Super Nintendo. So it was a lovely project to start on, and coming from a childhood of being, it was being so excited playing arcade games as a kid. I mean, these would have been Pac-Man and Galaxians and Mooncrest, those really early ones. But having to being part of that kind of sort of scene, if you like, and being able to say I've actually made music and sound for an arcade game was a great start to the career. Yeah, so that was our starting point. I think later on in the year, I think it was that year. I keep forgetting, but I'm pretty sure it was, because they were making Donkey Kong Country at the same time, and they were also making Donkey Kong Land. And I can't remember if I did that in '94 or '95, but yeah, it was. I sort of squeezed that in around doing Killer Instinct at the same time, which was kind of what happened during my time at Rare. I was always sort of taking on more than one project, so it was there was never a dull moment at that place.
So obviously you from what you said, you had experience working with cartridge-based games before you got to the Nintendo 64, and presumably there are limitations. So what kind of limitations and challenges do cartridge-based games bring?
Well, it's the memory. The memory is minuscule. I'd done the Killer Instinct conversion onto the Super Nintendo the year after. It was never originally supposed to have been for the SNES. It was always the showcase for the Ultra 64 N64 launch, but that was delayed, and so they had a gap and they had to do something with that. So trying to squeeze these sort of full-blown compositions onto Super Nintendo, where you had something like 64 kilobytes of memory to cram the music and the sound effects all into 8 channels of sound was fairly quite a feat. So coming from there, where you had absolutely no memory, to the N64, it was a nice step up. There was a lot more memory, but not that much more. I mean, the beauty with the N64 as it went along its sort of time is the cartridges got bigger. So I think at the end of its stretch, something like Conker's Bad Fur Day was something like 64 megabytes or megabits. I can't remember. I think Nintendo went for megabit, so it would have been less than 64 megabytes. But Blast Core was my first title, and that was 8 meg, and I think GoldenEye was 12 meg. So that was 12 megs for the whole game, all the graphics, all the sound, and everything. And I think in total, for sound and music, we had something like 700k. You could fit it onto a double density floppy drive if you wanted, floppy disk or whatever. So yeah, it involved a lot of sort of careful planning and very small looping every sound that you could possibly loop, and crushing the sample rate. So you sort of reduce it until you've got you don't want to go past the point where it sounds dreadful, but if it's passable, it's like, okay, well, that'll have to do. So they sound quite harsh, to modern ears, but it's one of those things with video games that Dave Wise always told me. He said the music always sounds better with the graphics, and he's absolutely right. If you listen to those sort of soundtracks in isolation, they can sound quite harsh, especially their stuff. But when you're playing it with the game and you've got the sound effects and everything, it kind of works. It's it all comes together.
So do you remember when talk of doing a Bond game first came up?
So it was early '95. We'd just finished Killer Instinct, and we'd gone to like a trade show somewhere in London. I can't remember what it was, but it was, I think they had the reason we were there must have been because they had a Killer Instinct machine or something, and it was the launch of in the UK or something like that. And I can remember having a coffee with Martin, and he was talking about having been asked about doing this game, and I'm sure it was at that point it was going to be a Super Nintendo game. So I'd imagine we'd be looking at a side-scrolling beat 'em up or something, as all film tie-ins were back in those days. But Martin was adamant that he wanted to do it for the next generation of consoles, so hence they went along with that. And that was kind of the last I heard of her. Well, that was the last I sort of got involved in any of that until sort of late summer that year, where I just went to the GoldenEye block one evening just to sort of see what they'd been up to, and Martin was showing me the sort of flying around the levels that they sort of the early stages of what they had. There was no gameplay or anything at that point. It was just a fly through, and we talked about it, and I mentioned how much fun it would be to work on it and how much it would be mean to me to do it. And I worked with Martin on Killer Instinct, so he knew what I was capable of, I suppose. And so that's sort of where that sort of started. It was still really early days. I mean, it was okay. We didn't have any hardware or anything like that. No one really knew what the final specs were going to be. So there was a lot of just sort of finger in the air and thinking, well, it's probably going to be able to do this and do that. So it was a case of just writing some music and hoping that it would work in the when we actually got the hardware in the end and stuff like that.
So you were obviously a Bond fan then.
Well, I think I'm a Bond fan from my childhood. I think it's a bit like Doctor Who. Your favourite is always the one that you grew up with. So mine was Roger Moore, which is probably not the coolest one, but they were always a Christmas stalwart. In the days before home video. The Bond film at Christmas was always a big thing. So yeah, and yeah, it was just, it was an exciting thing to work on. I mean, film and TV tie-in games had kind of got a bad reputation. In the 8-bit days, you'd got companies like Elite just churning them out, and not really paying too much attention to the quality of it. But I mean, in the end, it worked out well for Rare and the GoldenEye team, because they were very passionate about the whole project.
Yeah, because I do see things online saying, oh, it was nobody wanted to work on it and nobody wanted to work on a Bond game, and I don't think that's true at all.
Not that I was aware of. I mean, Rare was quite a secretive place to work, so there wasn't a lot of gossip. So that could be true of some people, but certainly the people that were on the team were very dedicated and very into what they were doing. I mean, it was not a project without problems. So people might have been thankful for not working on it for that reason. But no, certainly the people working on it, they were very invested.
So obviously exciting getting to work with the Bond music and everything, but was there some apprehension there as well, because it's some of the themes are so well known, especially obviously the Bond theme?
Not that I can remember. I think sort of the one of the luxuries of being young at the time, sort of early 20s, is naivety and big-headedness. So I didn't really think too much about it. I was just excited that we could do it. It would be a different story now, having now knowing what I know now and all the pitfalls of everything, and the usual stuff. The more you do something, the more you sort of know what to expect and what to expect that's going to go wrong. So no, it was just a case of going in there just with sort of excitement, really. I wasn't I mean, I suppose I don't know, it's I knew that with the N64 and the hardware that we had to work with sort of musically, I knew that trying to match match a film score wasn't going to happen back then. And so it was a case of putting our own, like mine and Grant's sort of touch to it, I suppose, and our style. So there was, I think, knowing that you weren't expected to emulate a full orchestra back then was a given as well. So maybe that was another thing that made it a little bit of an easier project to get into. I can't really remember. I mean, yeah, all I can remember is just being thrilled to be part of it.
So from what I understand, the license covered pretty much the whole of Bond, apart from certain Bonds like Sean Connery and Roger Moore, etc. So I'm just wondering what kind of, in terms of music, what did that cover? Because obviously a lot of the Bond themes are songs by huge artists. So was anything off limits, or?
All we had was the rights to use the theme tune. So we couldn't use anything else. So we had the Monty Norman theme as arranged by John Barry, which was fine, because there's so many hooks and themes in that one piece of music that just did all the work for us. I mean, you've got you've got the guitar part, you've got the brass stabs, you've got the string progression. You just use one of those anywhere, and immediately it's like, oh yeah, it's James Bond, you know. So that in itself was just, that was the starting block, and that was fine. I mean, yeah, there's probably some nods to some of the other Bond songs, you know, maybe a little bit close at times. I know Grant's, he's a lot more forward about it. He's like, oh yeah, I took the Duran Duran song here and I used the drum beat from this here and stuff like that. But I think in most places we stuck to what we were allowed to use.
Was it A View to a Kill that Duran Duran did?
Yes, that was it.
Yeah, because there's definitely you know, one bit I can think of right now in GoldenEye with kind of the start, but it's kind of dissimilar enough not to be, you know.
It's a tip of the hat.
Yes, indeed.
If Simon Le Bon's watching.
Yes. So in terms of you know, input from anyone else, will you give them any like specific parameters, or is it pretty much just your creative freedom to just have a go at it?
What, for the music, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
So Martin Hollis was very involved in all aspects of the development. So what I generally do is, once I'd written a piece that I felt was, you know, close enough to being finished, I'd get him in to listen to it and get his sort of you know, feedback and stuff. I might have taken music over to the team, but I can't really remember. I mean, it's funny thinking back to it. It was not really a time. No, we did. It was pre MP3, and it was pre sort of, you know, anyone that had any space on our hard disks were all, you know, in stupidly small, and so everything was there was a lot of work that wasn't anywhere near the net, you know, PCs or networks. So it wasn't just like, you know, sending a file to everyone on the team saying, listen to this, what do you think? To do that, I'd put it onto a cassette tape and take it over and play it on one of their stereos or something. It's, you know, it's bonkers thinking about it now, but it's a long time ago. So yeah, generally I think I would have either done that or got Martin over to my room and sort of played what I'd written and stuff. But overall, he was fairly pleased with what was, you know, the first passes, if you like. There was a few points where he'd say, "Oh no, it's a bit too this or a bit too that," but I know he wasn't happy with the attempt to do the theme tune, because I tried it first and it wasn't really working. I was trying to do. I was previous to what I was just saying. I was trying to emulate it in a more sort of one-to-one fashion, and it sounded awful. So that was on the drawing. That kept going back to the sort of drawing board, but luckily Grant really hit that out of the park when he did like the guitar version of it and managed to squeeze that into the N64. So that was he took what I'd started and finished it for me, if you like, because yeah, that was hard work getting that one to gel. So yeah, that was the hardest one, which was the most important one to get right.
I know you had a little bit of history with remixing tracks. Did that help at all, like kind of working with a theme?
Well, I hadn't my remixing.
Was that after?
Was after, yeah. So
okay.
Yeah, up to that point, it was purely sort of my own music I'd written.
So that was maybe your first remixes on GoldenEye then.
Yeah,
technically.
Yeah.
So did you work on sound effects as well?
Yes, yeah, as much as there are any in there. I mean, yeah, there's I think I did all of the sound effects actually, because Grant had been moved off quite early on to work on the what became Banjo-Kazooie, but was at the time called Dream. when it was still a Super Nintendo game. So he wrote a ton of pieces, and then Tim Stamper was like, "These are brilliant, absolutely amazing. I want you on my team." So it was like he got sort of shanghaied onto there. So I mean, sound effects wise, it's fairly basic. There's not an awful lot going on there really. I mean, it's tiny memory, and there's by today's standards, it's probably something you could do in a busy afternoon.
Right. So are those sound effects? Do you actually create them from scratch, or how does it work?
We created a few of them, but in general, it was because at the time, all the audio team members at Rare were musicians first and foremost. I mean, we'd all come from backgrounds where we wrote music, and that was sort of that's what we did. But it was that starting point in game dev where the sort of disciplines were sort of branching out a little bit. So where we'd be sort of a one-man band sort of thing where you'd do everything, you'd do the sound effects, do the music, and the dialogue. Not that there was any dialogue in Bond, but you know what I mean. But now, nowadays you'll have a team of 5 to 10 plus people in audio, and they're all doing very particular parts of their job. So so there was a lot of just off the shelf stuff really. We were, all of us were very wet behind the ears, and we were all new to us, and we just had this sort of this sound library of about 50 CDs or something, where you had this big telephone book directory, and you'd look up all these sound effects, and then you go and grab the CD, listen to it, and it's like, yeah, maybe, and then grab another CD, listen to that. So there wasn't. It's so different to today, where everything's at your fingertips, and everyone's got sort of field recorders and stuff like that. So if you want to make sounds, it's just as quick sometimes just to do it yourself. There's a lot of stuff in there that's sort of recognizable. You'll hear them in other stuff, which is why I reused the alarm sound in Time Splitters 2 just as a nod to GoldenEye, because it was just an off the peg thing. It was first project. I'm not saying we didn't know what we were doing. It was it was a lot, but it was a lot of instinct going on. But as careers have progressed, you get better, and you don't make those rookie mistakes, because you hear, having worked with those sort of off the shelf CDs for a few years, you just hear those sounds all the time in TV programs and films and stuff, and you think, so it sometimes pays to try and do something a bit more original, I think.
It's like whenever you hear the Wilhelm scream in a film, and you're like, there we go.
Exactly. Once it's in your head, you'll hear them time and time again. And that one particularly, I mean, that's one that sort of broke into the public knowledge, isn't it? But there's so many ones that people just, and you just think it's surely they know as well. Surely, I wonder sometimes if it's done on purpose as a sort of in joke, or people are just oblivious to the fact that everyone else is using those same sounds.
I know the Doom doors sound is everywhere.
Yeah, I think I might have used those on Blast Core. I'm pretty sure I might have done, just on some of the menus or something. Yeah, you hear them all the time.
So obviously each level has its own music. Was that just something that happened after the music was composed, or did you have like any idea of their purpose while you were composing them? Or
As so, when we started, it was very much just a list of level names, because the game, I mean, the game was obviously late, as you know, and we didn't know it was going to be late at the time, so we were working towards these deadlines that I was thinking, we're never going to hit this, but we've got to write these pieces of music or whatever. So I'd say the first 30% of the tunes were written not knowing much about what was going on at all, and then and slowly, as the game started developing and progressing, you could either go back to those pieces if they didn't work, and the ones you were then working on made more sense. And by the end, and I'm talking now sort of, this would have been sort of spring 97, I could actually load the game up in my room, play the levels, and and write to that, and that made so much more sense, and it was so much, it just helped so much more. So yeah, there was a progression on how it worked, and obviously the best way to do it is to be able to play the game whilst you're writing the piece, and listen to it and see what's working and stuff. But we don't always get that luxury, and it certainly is a luxury of being an in-house composer, which is quite rare, no pun intended. But usually if you're a freelance outsourcer or something, you'll get a brief from the audio director that just says, can you write something that is, it's based here and the game's this and it might do this, so that's kind of all you've got to go on. So yeah, we were very lucky in that respect, that we could actually spend some time and hone what we were doing.
wow, I know it was kind of a big thing because everyone getting and playing the game, and it was a big thing on GoldenEye to have that feedback, from playing the game. So it's interesting to hear that it was the same with the music, which makes perfect sense, obviously. So yeah, I was actually going to ask if you played the game during development. So what are your thoughts on like the success of the game, and obviously its continued appreciation today?
Well, it's amazing. Obviously, it's absolutely incredible. With all games, when you're working on them, you're seeing it day in, day out, and you lose all you lose all manner of sort of way to judge it. By the end of it, I didn't know if it was going to be a success or anything. I just had no clue anymore. And it was certainly a slow burner. I mean, I don't think anyone really expected it to take off quite how it did. And for a game to sell as long as it did as well, which these days that's so unusual, because everything gets a very short shelf life. Not that sounds old now, doesn't it? Shelves, but it's there and it's gone, and then you're on to the next thing. But that kept going for Christmas after Christmas after Christmas, which is crazy. But no, it was. I mean, the fact that I'm talking to you today just goes to show how lucky I was to have been involved in that project. And it's I always say I can't imagine there's anything more to say about that game. But I'm not saying I'm not going to talk to anyone about it, because it's wonderful that people are interested after all this time, and it's something that it's obviously aged, and it's sometimes it's better to remember things the way they were and stuff. But that's what we do. People, they remember things fondly. It doesn't mean they want to go back there all the time and relive it and stuff. Although it was quite nice to see that leaked version of the 360 version that came out recently. That was interesting, because I'd never seen that. I'd left Rare by the time that was being worked on, so that was interesting. It's a shame that didn't come out, because that would have been marvelous. Sort of, online play and stuff like that. But no, I could never have imagined its longevity, but I'm absolutely chuffed that it has, because not everyone gets that. I suppose I've got that, and there's a lot of love for Rare, obviously, and for me, with Free Radical, there's Time Splitters, which a lot of people like as well. But I've done a heck of a lot of games that nobody could give a monkeys about, So yeah, be thankful for those for the ones that you do, that people remember fondly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, my whole channel is people watching for that dose of nostalgia, and I know it means a lot to a lot of people. And I mean, I still play GoldenEye today, and I think the soundtrack is one of those soundtracks, certainly among all my friends, that if you just play a few notes and they're instantly there,
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's 8-bit stuff. I mean, I'm huge into Commodore 64 music, so it's a generation thing, isn't it? It takes you back to a time when life wasn't complicated, because you're a kid, and all you had to worry about was what you're having for dinner or something. I don't know. There was no worries. So it's. I think everyone has their sort of their period in time that is their retro, if you like.
I think it's probably Amiga era for me, because I wasn't born until 1980, so I did play a lot of Commodore 64, and I've got a BBC Micro here. I played a lot of BBC Micro, but I didn't own one. Our first one that we owned was Amiga, but that's definitely kind of my fondest era.
I love the Amiga. I don't quite have the love of the music as much, even though that's what I started writing music on, was a tracker. But there's something about those 8-bit samples that I just it's that sort of mid-period where they're trying to be real instruments, but they can't quite do it. So the SID chip and the 8-bit micros were like, well, this is what we've got. This is all we've got. We'll make the most of it. So yeah, I like Amiga music when they're doing chip music, but it's that sort of that really sort of low resolution sample rate used to get. But no, I mean, there's obviously some really good stuff written on it, and the game. I love the games on the Amiga as well. I've still got a 1200, but I haven't turned it on for a long time. So I think if I ever do, it will probably pop. So there's probably some maintenance work to go before that gets refurbished, I think.
The Commodore 64 has still got quite an active scene, I think, in terms of music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is great.
Yeah, and it's all guys my age. So it's probably got another 10 years or so. But no, it's great. I love all that sort of stuff, and talking about the Amiga again, you've got people like Ravi Abbott doing DJ mix sessions on it with two 1200s. I love the fact that that's around, and people are still making music with Mega Drives and stuff. It's it's great stuff.
I've got actually up there. This guy released an album on the SNES and an album on the Mega Drive.
Wow.
Absolutely nuts, and that's all it was available on. You couldn't buy it on CD or anything.
Oh, right, so it's actual cartridge.
Yeah, I'll show you it if you like. I just love little quirky things like this. It's literally that's the album.
Cool. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
And then there's one on the Mega Drive. Absolutely brilliant. So amazing what people do with these old systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'll message Ravi after this and say you should shout him out. Yeah, he's a nice guy. Well, yeah, thanks so much for talking to me.
Cool. Okay,
that was absolutely fantastic.
Okay. But, yeah, I think mostly the team are very happy to talk about it. A bit kind of like I said, I mean, I felt at times like, oh God, here they are again. Oh, when we made GoldenEye, blah blah blah. But I don't know. I've got over that a little bit. And if people still want to hear about it, then that's fine.
That is kind of the reaction I sometimes expect, that people are just going to be done with it.
Yeah.
I thought I had a spreadsheet here of. Oh yeah, I do. So I'm just looking at this. I have kind of also messaged. I mean, I've pretty much messaged everyone in one way or another. But it's you four guys that I've heard back from.
Right. Cool.
But well, yeah, we'll see.
If you need anyone nudging in a few weeks or something, give me a shout and I'll say that you're a lovely chap and they should talk to you.
I might do that. I might take you up on that. That's really kind.
That's
Just if I don't hear back, it's worth a try, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Matt, obviously.
Yes.
Matt hooked me up with your email, didn't he?
Yeah. We worked together at Dambusters.
Yeah, I love Matt. Such a great guy.
Yeah. He does the retro. Well, but when we're allowed out again, he was starting sort of the retro fairs in Nottingham. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah,
I went to one of those before things went south.
Yeah. I'm not massively into collecting anymore. I'm trying to, because there was a lot of guys at work that do that, and I can see what a slippery slope it is. It's like. Yeah, I can see.
And this is after I've sort of quartered it, the size, because it did get a bit out of hand. But I mean, I see it all the time. People, it becomes an obsession.
Yeah, because now there's consoles that have been and gone. You've got a target, haven't you? You can collect every single game that came out, and I mean that is dangerous. I used to collect records, and I've been down that path before. So it's fun though. It's fun.
It is, yeah, it is.
Anyway, Pete, it's been lovely speaking to you. Thanks for having me.
No, yeah, thanks for doing it. Much appreciated.
And, you've got my email, so yeah, I absolutely mean that. If you're finding some people just haven't got back to you, for whatever reason, I'm not sure it's not going to be personal. I can just put in a good word and say you should get in touch.
Thank you very much.
Cool. All right. Well, good luck with the rest of it.
Thank you. I will email you a link to it, eventually when it's finished. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
Okay. Have a nice evening.
Good night. Cheers.